Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes as more people roll in here. Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started at 2 after. We have a lot to share today, so we'll try to get started soon.
Say that again. Because I can't listen to the earphones as a reverb. Oh,
all right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome. I'm super excited to launch the second webinar for the NFFA. It's called Community-Led Solutions in Floodplain Management. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. You may have noticed that you are muted and you don't have your camera on, and that's okay. We can still hear from you. So if you just scroll down to the bottom of your screen, you should be able to find either or the Q&A function or the chat function. So you can use those throughout the webinar, put questions in there, and we'll try to answer them in the order that they were received. Also, just a heads up, this webinar will be recorded and placed on the NFFA website. And there's going to be everyone's favorite, a small survey at the end of this. It just takes less than 5 minutes, but it's really helpful if you fill it out for us to help us better serve y'all for upcoming webinars. You should receive that in your email as well, or an automatic prompt after the webinar. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. So want to just start by sharing a little bit about the Natural Floodplain Functions Alliance. We're an affiliation of a little over 2,500 nonprofit and private organizations, government agencies, and individuals. And we are dedicated to the protection and preservation of the natural functions of floodplains. You can check out our website, utilize our resource library, sign up for our monthly newsletters, and stay up to date with future webinars all through this QR code. So I'll give you a second to screenshot that. And the Natural Floodplain Functions Alliance, we have a steering committee that convenes monthly to advance our mission and goals. So I just want to give a shout out to the folks who help make that happen every month. And this webinar is part of our series we just launched last year. So our first webinar happened in October. It was called Clean Water for All. It focused on the current state of clean water protections. And if you missed it, it's no big deal. You can look at the recording on our website. Today, we will be hearing from NFFA members who have worked directly with frontline communities most affected by flood risk. And then in April, we're going to have a focus on state integrated floodplain management. We'll talk about what different partners are doing to advance those strategies across the nation. And then in July, we're going to share the work that American Rivers and Conservation Science Partners have been doing, producing a national floodplain assessment map and report. And so that project is really going to quantify the degree of floodplain protection and alteration across the US, and hopefully be a really useful tool for folks to increase the scale and pace of restoration. So you can learn more about those on our website as well. And then before we dive into the content for today, I'd like to introduce myself and American Rivers that's facilitating this. So my name is Lacey Davis. I'm the Associate Director of Floodplain Restoration for American Rivers, and I'm based in Atlanta on Muskogee lands. And I work nationally to advance floodplain restoration. One of my primary goals is supporting the NFFA. So thrilled to be here today. Also thrilled to be working with American Rivers on this. We're a national conservation nonprofit, and we work to protect wild rivers, restore damaged rivers, and conserve clean water for people and nature. So we have some ambitious goals. If you're not familiar with us, check out our website. Alrighty, and then I would like to introduce our speakers for today. We'll be hearing from Dr. Rachel Scarlett, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Geosciences at Georgia State University. She is broadly interested in how urban development and environmental racism shape our waterways and the communities that use, depend on, and are impacted by urban water. And we'll also be hearing from Deborah Nedenrep, who works as the Water Resources Specialist for the CWSD. And she's a certified floodplain manager, and she'll be talking about the work that she's done with the Conservation Carson River Coalition. So happy to have y'all here today. Thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna pass it on to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Lacey, for that introduction. Today, I will be talking about the Civic Innovation Hub. And before I start, I want to acknowledge my co-contributors to this project and this presentation, which include Brandon Evans, who's the Manager of Urban Resilience at the Center for Neighborhood Technology, Catherine Elias, who's the Senior Manager of Urban Resilience at the Center for Neighborhood Technology, and Maggie Catania, who's the co-director of the Calumet Collaborative. We can go to the next slide. My hope is by the end of today's session, you'll learn how we used community expertise to facilitate and support their creation of solutions to stormwater problems. You'll understand the challenges we faced in this program and identify how to keep the ball rolling for implementation of solutions to flooding issues. Next slide. We implemented the Civic Innovation Hub in the Calumet region. The Calumet region is the southern portion of Cook County, which is south of Chicago, and it actually includes some parts of the south side of Chicago and goes into northwest Indiana. Before European colonization, the Calumet region was covered by wetlands and prairies and forests and rivers. Of course, indigenous peoples transformed this landscape and these waterways to make way for trade and navigation long before the current transformations happened to the landscape. Much of the transformation that stands out today began during industrialization, where significant changes were made to the flow of water in this region. For example, the region used to be a part of the Great Lakes watershed. However, throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, many of the waterways were modified and changed, including the creation of the Cowsack Channel, which was created to support industry and divert polluted flows away from the region's water source, which is Lake Michigan. This shifted the area's watershed. Additionally, much of the marshy landscape was drained to build industry and residential areas. And there were consequences to these changes. Now, some people have homes that sit in floodplains. There are wetlands that were filled in with byproducts of the steel manufacturing industry. And then there's houses built on top of that infill. These negative impacts are compounded with other uneven impacts across the region, like racism in mortgage lending and disinvestment in communities, and especially in commercial areas in some of these communities. Everyone who participated in our program lives in a community within this broader region. but each community has their own story. And through the Civic Innovation Hub, we try to center the community's stories and community's experiences in decision making so that the community benefits from decisions made about water. So the key takeaway from, I'm hoping from this presentation, and the key takeaway that we strove, the key goal that we were striving for was that communities most impacted by disinvestment and flooding are centered in decision making. So I'm going to start out by talking about one of the main programs in the region run by the Center for Neighborhood Technology called Rain Ready. The Civic Innovation Hub was launched from Rain Ready as like a platform and foundation. Rain Ready is a program run by the Center for Neighborhood Technology. And within this program, the Center for Neighborhood Technology, along with municipal staff and community members, as well as other stakeholders, they created plans to become rain ready. So they created plans to address stormwater and flooding issues within the communities of the Calumet region. The core focus was to engage residents who were affected by flooding and planning for solutions to flooding. And Brandon Evans, my colleague, is the lead of this Rain Ready program. Now, the Civic Innovation Hub was launched after the Rain Ready program, and the Civic Innovation Hub is a program that the Center for Neighborhood Technology ran in partnership with the Calumet Collaborative, the Field Museum, where I was working at the time, and Faith in Place. The vision of the Civic Innovation Hub is that the Calumet region is a region in which infrastructure solutions are planned and built with resident and community leadership. And the mission is to organize residents in the Calumet region in partnership with local governments to get results on social, economic, and environmental infrastructure. And this round, we had a specific focus on stormwater management. Throughout the Civic Innovation Hub, we provided educational tools, data analysis tools, and community advocacy tools. So if we look at the Civic Innovation Hub by the numbers, you can see that 18 residents participated in the Civic Innovation Hub across 6 communities. And they participated in 6 virtual sessions that we hosted on Zoom and 2 in-person field trips over an 8-month period. The sessions covered topics such as flooding, green stormwater infrastructure, community organizing, community asset mapping, and municipal planning. At the end of the series of workshops, we did a survey of the residents, and participants shared that they appreciated the activities that we hosted. They felt educated, they felt like their voice was heard, and they felt that the staff was supportive of them participating in the workshops. Most of the community members were committed to staying engaged with the Civic Innovation Hub past the end of the workshop, and participants were paid for participating in these workshops. So now we'll get to recruitment. Recruitment was critical to the success of this program. And the Center for Neighborhood Technology and Faith in Place really took the lead with the recruitment strategy. One of the great strengths of the program was having Faith in Place involved. Faith in Place is a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to helping religious institutions organize around climate issues. So they had already organized within this region and knew a lot of the community leaders in the areas that we were working in. We also focused on communities that were already connected with the Rain Ready program so that they can continue their participation in the Civic Innovation Hub. Let's go, centering residents. So the Civic Innovation Hub was designed to center residents from the beginning to the end, and I'm going to talk about a few ways that we tried to do this. Every session had time dedicated to communities meeting in small groups and for people to share their experience with the larger group across the 6 communities. This began in the first session with folks sharing their experiences with flooding and how they've tried to respond to it, either by working with neighbors or working with their municipality to respond to flooding. The session captured in this photo was held at a rain garden in Alsip, Illinois. During this field trip, we focused on the functionality and maintenance of green infrastructure, and we started the session with an icebreaker asking participants what their fondest memory of being in a garden was. So this prompt really helped lead the discussion around um, the function that green spaces can have for communities. And you can see here, one of the participants said they felt like their experiences and concerns were listened to and appreciated, and it was inspiring to hear other civic leaders' stories. Throughout the Civic Innovation Hub, it was an 8-month period, but we did have 2 major storms during the workshops, and these storms happened in the summer during our workshops. These storms led to 2 presidentially declared disasters in the region. And you can see here a lot of the flooding was due to urban flooding issues. So the infrastructure being overwhelmed by rainwater. The floods were experienced by a lot of our participants or their neighbors. Everyone knew someone who was impacted by the floods. So during our workshops, we had to pivot our agenda to incorporate time for folks to talk through what was happening, to talk through what services were available to help mitigate the issue. But this also helped us kind of navigate through future conversations about what projects residents can lead to address the flooding issues. These capstone project plans were built from discussions on community assets and needs. So we decided to do some asset mapping to map out what community assets may be useful when discussing stormwater management and solutions to storm issues. These asset maps were developed with the residents who were trained to support facilitation and trained to support this facilitation through a multi-part discussion. So we discussed this over multiple workshops. The asset maps led to conversations on the gaps and opportunities that could seed a capstone project. We started with general asset mapping session where we asked questions like, what are the places that are important to you and your family in your community? And then we work to highlight assets that could help with flood mitigation. So we ask questions like, what flood-prone area has the most assets? How may these assets be used together to address flooding challenges? So you can see on the map here that we mapped assets like schools, natural areas, health resources, government agencies, gardens, faith organizations, businesses, and community organizations. And this is a map of one of the communities that we worked in, Blue Island. It was really interesting because the conversations between communities started to diverge here, where some communities were able to identify key assets that they wanted to work with, like schools in their communities. And then other communities were noticing that there were gaps in services that needed to be addressed alongside flooding issues before anything else could happen. We strived to include municipal leadership in these workshops. So in its initial design, we wanted each community that participated to have a municipal representative also attend the workshops, but we quickly realized that the municipal staff did not have the capacity to participate in this 8-month program. So we tried to include them into a couple of the workshops so that we have their input. We invited municipal staff to participate in a session where there was a panel and there were municipal staff from each community represented there. And the residents could chat with their municipal staff about how flooding is addressed from the angle of local governance. The session was titled Municipal Planning and Financing for Climate Resilience, and it actually occurred after one of the major flooding events. So our participants were able to make connection between flooding events and the roles and responsibilities of the municipality. We also were able to hear success stories from some of the municipalities where they were able to secure federal funding for stormwater infrastructure because of their collaboration with community organizations within their municipality. The photo here is showing a field trip that we took to Alsip, Illinois, which is a neighboring community. And Mike Frater here is a part of leading this field trip. He's the public work director of the village of Alsip. And he's explaining the governmental coordination around installing a rain garden. So our participants got to learn from that experience. Throughout our workshops, we also strive to use data to inform the capstone projects. So we use different types of data. We use flooding maps to point out where floods may or may not occur within the municipality, but we also use photos of flooding in the area. The Center for Neighborhood Technology had already launched this urban flooding baseline tool, which stemmed from the Rain Ready program, where they worked with community members to take photos of flooding in their neighborhood. And this served as a great tool because it resonated with the participants' experiences with flooding. And it really adds this qualitative piece to the data that helps contextualize the residents' experiences. We also use flooding maps, and we were able to overlay the flood zones with community assets so that the community members can think through where community assets and flood zones are aligning and use that information to inform their capstone projects. We also performed evaluation, iterative evaluation throughout the program. And this was one of my major roles in the program. So we performed a survey prior to the program starting, and then we performed surveys after every session so that we can so we can update our program. I don't know why that word is not coming out right now, but so we can update our program as it's ongoing. So let's get to the solutions of the Civic Innovation Hub. So the capstone projects from the Civic Innovation Hub fell into these three major categories. So 2 communities had participants who were part of Rain Ready, the original program led by the Center for Neighborhood Technology. And they were part of the Civic Innovation Hub. So through Rain Ready, there were already plans to implement green infrastructure, and these community members wanted to add to those projects by adding educational signage to the new infrastructure coming into their neighborhoods so that the community can recognize what the infrastructure is doing for water management. There were 2 other communities that had a really deep understanding of the capacity of their local governance. So they decided to work with school districts to start to fund stormwater infrastructure projects. One of our field trips was actually to a school site that implemented green infrastructure on the playground. So they got ideas from this and wanted to build their own green infrastructure programs on school sites. And they were considering school sites specifically so that they can build multi-generational leadership in water management. And then the last two communities wanted to explore how stormwater infrastructure can better serve their community. So there was one community that wanted to look at the discrepancy in city investments in stormwater infrastructure by researching where the money was going for stormwater infrastructure, because they noticed that some neighborhoods within their municipality had more and some had less. And then there was another municipality that was experiencing a major investment in green infrastructure in their community, and they wanted to know how this investment can be used to create entrepreneurship opportunities for youth and local businesses. So with all of these different ideas, we still needed a plan to help move these ideas forward. Given our capacity, we had to break up the implementation into smaller pieces, and a lot of this implementation work is being led by the Center for Neighborhood Technology and the Calumet Collaborative. So they are continuing to work with community members to connect participants in the Civic Innovation Hub with Rain Ready staff so that they can continue to be involved in community-led water management in their communities. We are seeking out larger grants like the EPA Community Change Grant and seeking out smaller local funders for some of the smaller scale projects. And lastly, we're building a larger organizing agenda where we're thinking about the Civic Innovation Hub across a broader region across the Calumet, in a broader region across the Calumet. So lessons learned from this program. First, when it came to the capstone projects, we realized that we should have started the capstone projects a lot earlier. We started the capstone projects in the last 3 or so sessions. But next time we do this, we would start the capstone projects in the beginning so that the participants can start thinking about their ideas early on, and we can start finding resources and support for those projects a little earlier. When it came to administration and facilitation, we realized that the facilitation has to be well thought out, especially considering we're compensating participants, we're providing food, we're doing field trips. It was a lot of organizing that had to be done, and that needs staff support. We had lots of amazing staff, but I think we realized that we could have scaled it down and we would have been able to do we would have been able to be more efficient. And when it came to our end of program surveys, a lot of the participants said they wanted more time to talk with one another and learn from each other. And participants also said that they wanted more skill-based sessions so that they can feel confident when they're advocating for resources to their local government. With that, I would like to thank you for joining this webinar. And you can find a link to resources about the Civic Innovation Hub at this QR code. We have we have our virtual sessions there and all of our curriculum at that link. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We're going to save questions till the very end, and I will pass it on to Debbie. If you're ready, go ahead.
Unmute and get my audio going. Hello, everyone. And if I ever have to speak with Rachel again, I want to go first. Great job. So I just want to say good afternoon and thank you for having me here. I'm Debbie Nedenrip, and I'm here to tell you about our integrated watershed program and how it works in the Carson River watershed. Brenda can't be here today because of a family emergency. So I'm gonna forge on my own and hopefully give you an idea of what we do. So rather than, not yet, rather than bore you with the details, no, you can look at the map, of CWSD and how we got here, I just want to note that there are links to our bios. Our logo has a link to our website. And so I encourage you to look on your own and look for additional links throughout my presentation to learn about the different aspects of our program. Okay, next slide. So I always like to start with a little map because I realized I've forgotten more than than most of you probably know. And so Nevada is directly east of California. And so the state is largely rural. 86% of the state is federally managed land. We have 2 population centers. So Las Vegas, which is about 8 hours to the south, and Reno, which is about 30 minutes north. And then from there, if you zoom in to that west central corner, that's where the Carson River watershed is. So the watershed, the CWSD, or the Carson River watershed, Carson, can't even say our own name, the Carson Water Subconservancy District consists of 6 counties in 2 states. And next slide, please. Our watershed lies within the historic lands of the Washoe or Washishu and the Numu or Northern Paiute people, and their descendants still live in our watershed. And I'm happy to say we also work with them. Next slide, please. So when it comes to all of our integrated watershed and integrated watershed planning and management, it's all together. So when I'm working on floodplain management, I'm also thinking about water quality. I'm also thinking about water supply. I'm thinking about noxious weeds. I'm thinking about recreation, thinking about river rehabilitation projects and bank stabilization. So it's all interrelated. And Brenda and I started talking about how we could visualize this. Next slide, or next click. But this is about how it looks. If we were going to try to talk about all the interrelated pieces of how floodplains improve water quality, how they recharge groundwater, how they clean that water, how they are such a value to our community, you end up having this big mess of a graph. Next slide, please. So in our integrated watershed management, we aim to harness public and private efforts to restore, conserve, plan, and manage the watershed's resources and limit the impacts associated with non-point source pollution, with flooding, with drought, with noxious weeds, with aquatic invasive species. So this planning process and the principles embodied in it are used to actively bring together public and private parties who have a vested interest in the health of the river and the watershed. And we also look at the watershed from a whole. So we look at those natural resources and processes, the physical landscape and the people and creatures who live here. Next slide, please. So we do that through what's called the Carson River Coalition, and it was actually formed because of a flood in 1998. And when that coalition was formed, their vision statement was to sustain a healthy Carson River watershed and through all these different things. And that was reaffirmed in 2018, if you want to click, and at the 20th anniversary. And so who is the CRC? Next slide. So it's a lot of partners, and this is just a snapshot of some. So our 6 counties, conservation districts, private nonprofits, federal folks, state folks, the 2 tribes in our region, and all of the counties have adopted the CRC guiding principles. And so if you click on that link to the Carson River Coalition, you'll see those. So we do our work through annual watershed forums, working groups. We do environmental education, floodplain management, invasive species, and then agricultural working groups. We have regular meetings. We have an e-blast, social media. Next slide. And so, of course, effective planning requires plans. And so one of the things that we did, go ahead and click so those other ones come on, is that we created this Carson River Adaptive Stewardship Plan, or the CRASP. And the great thing about the CRASP is it allows all of the stakeholders named in it to be eligible for Clean Water Act 319 funds. And just as a side note, we are also the governor's 208 planning entity. And so that gives us a little bit of money every 3 years to kind of look at water quality planning. And we're actually due to update that plan. So next slide, please. So some of the things we do, I mean, it's all interrelated. This is the floodplain in Hope Valley. So we have long supported conservation districts, Alpine Watershed Group, River Wranglers Environmental Education Group, with local dollars for river rehabilitation programs. And then we also help fund noxious weeds and aquatic invasive fights. And if need be, we also help all of our stakeholders to obtain 319 funding in both Nevada and California. Next slide. This is the next few slides are just some pictures of some projects we've participated in. And so continue to click through. These are just a couple pictures of some of the noxious weed work, some of the river rehabilitation work. So next slide. And so because of the integrated watershed program, it led to the development of these two plans. So we have had a floodplain management plan that was created in 2008. It has since been updated 2 times, and it has been adopted each iteration. We had the 6th county go ahead and join our board and adopt it. They aren't next to the river, and so, but they have adopted the plan. And so because of this integrated watershed process, it led to the development of this plan. And click if you would. And so in 2015, so Brenda came on board in, I think, 2011, and she is so amazing. I'm sorry she can't be here today because I really wanted to highlight her amazing work over the last several years. She always thinks of this high level, collaborative process, and she works so hard to bring people together. And so she started this watershed literacy action plan because she realized that when we were going out and talking to people, they really didn't have the concepts of well, go to the next slide and I'll tell you. So the first part of this watershed action plan was to do a survey. So we did this representative survey, and this is like some of the answers we got. So 69% knew little or nothing about watersheds, and they were unsure or didn't think they lived in a watershed. 83%, once we explained what a watershed was, thought the health of the watershed was important and that conserving floodplains was important, but only 1% considered flooding dangerous to the watershed. While people cared about the health of the watershed, they didn't really think that their actions affected watershed health. And sadly, 3%, or about 11,000 people, said they actually pour water down the storm drain. And so this helped to inform not only our water quality program, but all of our programs in understanding, oh, there's a lot of information folks need to gain. And so I was a Debbie Downer, but Brenda had this awesome vision, and it's been amazing to watch it unfold. And so she launched, go ahead and go to the next slide. She launched this watershed literacy program. And right now in this continuum, we are at step 5, which is to resurvey, measure, and reflect. It included updating our physical and watershed maps. And we hand out these maps to thousands of students every year. We make them available to all of our partners. And then it has a companion online map that you can click on different factors to go ahead and click to learn about different aspects of our watershed. Next. And so one of the things we realized right off the bat was that folks didn't think they lived in a watershed. So the first thing that Brenda did was work with Nevada Department of Transportation to create watershed signs. Go ahead and click. And so that way folks knew when they were entering our watershed, but instead of saying you're leaving the Carson River watershed, we wanted folks to know which watershed they were entering when they left. And let me just say that was, this is a very short presentation, but working with the Department of Transportation to permit all of these signs was unbelievable. And so, it took probably 2 years to get all these signs up. We're still hoping to get it done on the California side, but that's a whole nother level of bureaucracy. So then the next step, next slide, please, was to create the I Am Carson River campaign. And so the goal of this campaign was to increase awareness that my behavior affects watershed health, and to use education to promote change in behavior that will ultimately improve our watersheds, habitat, water quality, water supply, floodplain management, the natural and beneficial functions. We're fortunate in our watershed to have a lot of open floodplain land still, and so we're always constantly trying to conserve those lands. And so I'll just, next slide is a video of the first kind of introductory video to our watershed. So I'll go ahead and let that run. And pray it works.
Yes, please let us know in the chat if you can't hear it.
Hello, did you know that you live in a watershed? Everyone does. Join me for a one-of-a-kind walkthrough the amazing lands that shed water to the Carson River and discover why watersheds are important for the health of our communities. Let's start up at the top high in the Sierra. Snow accumulates here and melts throughout the spring and summer, supplying water to the two forks of the Carson River. A flycaster's dream, the West Fork flows through the beautiful meadows of Hope Valley, while the East Fork rushes from the iceberg wilderness, creating a whitewater rafter's paradise. Both floodplain and meadows act like large sponges, soaking up spring runoff, capturing floodwaters, filtering pollutants, and recharging groundwater, our main source of drinking water. Near historic Genoa, the two forks of the river meet in the large floodplain of the Carson Valley. Here, the river's water is the lifeblood of the ranching and farming communities. While most rivers flow to the ocean, the Carson River flows through desert canyons and cottonwood galleries, terminating here in the Carson Sink. Smaller creeks from the surrounding ranges also contribute water to the Carson River. As rain, snowmelt, or irrigation runs off the land, it can pick up pollutants as it travels towards the river. This polluted runoff is the #1 impact to water quality in our watershed. Clean water is critical to grow our food, to replenish our groundwater, and to play in the water safely. We're launching the I Am Carson River Watershed campaign to ask our community to do a few simple things. By picking up your trash and pet waste, draining your rain gutters into your yard, recycling your motor oil, and by washing your vehicle at the car wash, you can keep pollutants out of our waterways. So whether you're dying to hang out in Virginia City, hiking Carson Valley's trails, swaying to the music in Carson City, boating on Lahontan Reservoir, sampling Churchill's finest, or birding at the Stillwater Wildlife Refuge, your actions matter. I am Carson River Watershed, and you are too. Let's all do our part to keep our families and our watershed healthy.
Okay, so I am so proud of that video. And so Brenda, as if that was not enough, each of these videos came with a whole social media campaign. And
Hello.
whoops, we want to go to the next slide. Let's see if
Yeah.
our PowerPoint will let us. I don't want to fight with Jessica. I will mention that when she filmed this, she's so amazing. She also did each little place that they were in Spanish while walking. I don't know if you've noticed how she's walking the whole time, but she
Did
was
you know that
walking that way. Come on, you can make it. Do it. Get past that. And so this campaign,
Sorry, we'll figure it out.
this campaign then went on to create 12 more videos. Explore, so we had Water Connects Us All, which talks about the importance of drinking water and keeping it clean. There's Bag It, Recycle Your Motor Oil. And with each of these additional videos, it was one action. And so it also had a contest where, like, if you answered some questions and did stuff online on our social media site, that you would be able to come in and get a physical prize. So with that, if you can get to the next video, we'll see.
I'm trying. We're having a tech issue, so bear with me for a minute.
So while she talks about that, I will talk about the other element. So we'll wait to see the next video. So concurrently, while she was doing all of this, as if it wasn't enough, she took it to the next level by creating basically an online web viewer of the Carson River Adaptive Stewardship Plan. So the first thing they had to do was take all the data, since the plan had been created in 2007 of projects that had been done, get that into an online format, name all those protocols and then put those projects online. And then the next step was to make a portal so that people, when they're doing a project on the river, we'll do that in a second. When they're doing a project on the river, they can actually use the Esri, I think it's something like 123. I can't remember what it's called completely. What's it called? Survey 123. So if they're doing a project on the river where they're going to do some rehabilitation project, noxious weed abatement, anything physical on the river, they can upload it. And then the third step will be to take that and then have a queryable database, do water sampling, and find out if these actions actually have it help to improve water quality. So back to the I Am Carson River campaign, will run just like maybe a minute. So 2 of the little videos. This is a reel of 6.
I'm Mara. Can you believe that over 50% of America's lakes and rivers are too polluted for fishing, swimming, and drinking? All sorts of gross stuff like trash, soaps, chemicals, and even pet and human poop. Yuck gets into our rivers, lakes, and streams. So when camping, hiking, biking, or RVing, say to yourself, I will dispose of my waste by using a sanitary dump station for my wash and septic water. Your actions matter. Let's recreate responsibly and do our part to keep trails and campsites clean.
Hi, I'm Jim. I really love cars, especially my classic Mustang. I also love where I live and care about the health of my neighbors, so I always recycle my used motor oil. When oil is poured on the ground or down storm drains, it contaminates our water and soil and kills fish, plants, and wildlife. A single gallon of oil can spoil 1 million gallons of water. 1 million. It's time to pump the brakes on that. Your actions matter. Let's recycle our motor oil and keep our rivers, lakes, and streams clean.
All right, thank you. And I already talked about the Carson River Adaptive Stewardship Plan. And I just wanted to kind of finish it off by transitioning to my story, because when Brenda started, I was pretty hostile about environmental stuff. I was focused on water quality, water supply, and I was not too interested in getting involved in, you know, all the water quality and environmental aspects. But over time, I have to say that not only is Brenda a great communicator with our outward stakeholders, she just, you know, was never judgmental and really worked to find the common language. And over time, I began to see, oh, we actually have similar values, just the language that we use is different. I think of it as conservative. She thinks thinks of it as environmentally stewards. And so we both feel the same about water bottles, that we should not use a bunch of plastic. But and so we were able to share that. And so I guess my part of the story is that she has really transformed my actions. I mean, I had never really even thought about picking up my dog poop, not because I didn't care. I just, you know, when I grew up here and there weren't that many people and it wasn't a big deal. I didn't think about our motor oil or watering our sidewalks, or I did think about trash, but I just want to say that her program has not only impacted other people, it's personally impacted me. And it has just affected our program and what I do with floodplain management and kind of water, a little bit of water supply, is that understanding and communicating the values of those open floodplain lands has, from the perspective of it's a great place to play. It's a great place to clean our water. It recharges our water. So to come at it from that whole integrated perspective. And so I kind of want to end by showing this video. Our general manager actually won Floodplain Manager of the Year because of the work that we do. And so I just thought I'd end with this short video that kind of explains some of the things that we've done. We've now done over 45 projects. So if we can get that video to play. Plus it shows our great watershed. And our smiling boss. So thank you so much for letting me give this presentation. You know, that integrated watershed management process has led to other funding. We got ARPA grants to do weed work and put people to work. Through the FEMA cooperating partners, we've done all these projects. And so her work is really awesome. The one difficult part is it's always a fight to get your funding. And so for us here in Nevada, the Nevada Environmental Protection Agency has kind of changed its focus. And so they have chosen not to renew this management program. We still have our local funds, but it really takes away the money that we give to our partners to implement these projects. But we're going to keep working on it, whether or not NDP funds us or not. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And thank you, Rachel, as well. Those were awesome. Those videos were really fabulous. We have a few minutes left for questions. If you want to put any questions you have in the Q&A, or you can put them in the chat. People have been blowing up the chat.
Yeah, Okay.
We do have one question in the Q&A that I'll read aloud for Debbie to answer, which is, were you able to air the videos as public service announcements, or did you have to pay?
I believe it was a little bit of both. So all of the original videos, which are included as bonus content in the presentation, they were released and they were about 2 minutes. Is that right, Kelly? About 1:30. And so of the 12 videos, we took 6 and compressed them down to 30 seconds. And so those 6 videos have been aired as public service announcements. And then we paid for videos to be on Charter. Yeah, that's Charter, Spectrum, cable. And I know that we also posted them on our social media and then boosted those. Also on radio. And then on radio.
Thank you. I actually have a question for Rachel. Yeah, looking at the asset mapping and the like really extensive curriculum that y'all designed, I know you spoke about kind of scaling it up throughout the Calumet region and throughout Illinois. Are there any, it seems like such a great model that other states could use. Is there any kind of potential for that or collaboration or visioning for that in the future?
Yeah, so our vision right now is to work in Northwest Indiana, because this is an extension of the Calumet region and we're working with communities that are familiar with the Calumet region. The curriculum may be able to still fit in that area. We're still not sure about how widely the curriculum can be expanded. The Calumet region is a really unique place, and we had a lot of people who were community leaders who knew a lot about water already participating in the workshops. So yeah, I would say we're still working on, how widely this can be expanded.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I learned a lot. And you're both doing such incredible work that is really inspiring. Someone in the chat, Glenn, just said that Dr. Scarlett's presentation is proof on how community activism and grassroots, oh, the chat's blowing up too fast. It's the best method for identifying and solving local flooding. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's some information that only came to us, unfortunately. So I want to share it out loud and make sure everybody can hear it, which is that PSA spots are available for both public and private broadcasters in 30 and 60-second slots. So that's great information to share.
Thank you, Colin.
Yeah.
And then I noticed William had a question for me. Has anyone attempted to look at the economic benefits of floodplain restoration projects? And we had done an ecosystem services survey, but unfortunately, it basically said that it would provide so much money to the ranchers that they wouldn't even want to ranch. And the other problem was that there was no way to pay people for it. So you can say, they're providing us millions of dollars of benefits. Well, then we have a couple, we have several agricultural members on our board, and they were like, well, then why are we even ranching? You could just pay us to sit around if you pay us that kind of money for having all these open floodplain lands. And so we kind of would like to do, that is one of the things we would like to do that's more realistic about, how to fund the ecosystem and look at the economic benefits. Yes, I
Yeah. In the chat, to make sure everybody sees that too, there's some, Aaron said to look up Ogden River restoration in Utah for some benefits there. And I know that American Rivers also has some information, some research and reports on some of the economic benefits of floodplain restoration projects. Those actually should be up on the NFFA website in our floodplain resources. And it's a
Mhm.
good reminder for me to make sure they are. Because there are so many economic benefits to floodplain restoration.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, even in the urban sense, we're thinking about how green spaces can provide jobs. Green spaces have to be maintained. So that can start, providing jobs to the local economy.
Awesome. Well, in the interest of time, and it is 4 o'clock on the dot in Eastern Standard Time. And thank you all for being here today. We'll be sending out this slides and the recording, and you can also check out the recording on the NFFA website.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.